Thank you for that introduction, Gabriela. My name is Lilian Calderon, and just like Rodrigo, I immigrated to the United States at the age of 3. Throughout my whole life, I have been undocumented, documented, undocumented again, detained by ICE, almost deported by ICE, and documented again. So I understand, and anytime anyone speaks about the uncertainty that they are feeling, it kind of triggers those same feelings that I felt of the uncertainty, of the unknown. Up until May of this year, I didn't even know if I was going to be able to live in the country that I call my home, raise my children, continue a life that we started building here. And so that uncertainty really, really hits hard when I hear anyone speak of that. And I know firsthand how desperately we need immigration reform. And it's one of those things that we talk about it, and a lot of politicians, like Rose said, put it on the back burner, but I think enough is enough. I think it's time to kind of ask ourselves those questions. What are our politicians going to do for immigration reform to keep families united? Because we are a country of hopes and dreams, and we are a country that values family. But when we are separating families at the border, when we are separating families here in Rhode Island, it saddens me, and I think it saddens all of us to know that if it's happening to my family, it can happen to anyone's family. And we must do everything in our power to just speak up and say no more. Enough of seeing our children in cages, enough of seeing families not knowing if they're going to see their mom, their dad, their siblings, because a lot of families also live in mixed status families where some children were born in the United States, some were not, and through loopholes, through faulty immigration systems, through outdated immigration laws, some children do not qualify for DACA. There's also this generation of adults that didn't qualify for DACA because they were either too old, or now they are being also brought into the United States with their parents, so they didn't meet those guidelines, and that kind of just leaves everyone in a limbo. And so my story is one of, how long do we have? In a nutshell, like Gabriela said, it all started, I was very fortunate because I was raised in Providence. I spent half of my life in Providence and the other half in Warwick. So I was fortunate enough that I had a great support system. And during those years in school, I met an amazing man, and he ended up turning out to be the love of my life. I met him in high school. We were high school sweethearts. We pretty much grew up together because we were children when we met, pretty much. And we decided to form a life together because, of course, when you're dating, the first thing, you're not going to ask someone, hey, what's your immigration status? At 15, 16, 17 years old, you don't even know what an immigration status is. Sometimes you're oblivious to the fact that you are undocumented. So we dated, we formed a relationship, we moved in together just like everyone else. We ended up getting married, and surprise, we were pregnant with Natalie, who is our firstborn. And she was kind of never in the plans because I knew, and my husband also knew, that my immigration status was questionable, due to, and here's another thing, in Rhode Island, anyone can be any sort of lawyer, whether it's immigration law, criminal law. They don't really have to have a specialty. So in the previous years, I had not so great legal representation that kind of messed up a lot of things, and things that a child cannot fix. No matter if they turn 18 and they retry, no matter if they turn 21 and retry to file with immigration, once you're in that system, you're in that crazy, complex immigration system. And so Natalie was a surprise to us, and my husband said to me, well, you know what, enough is enough. You have tried and you have exhausted all your legal options to adjust your immigration status since I can remember. I am going to petition for you because you are my wife. We are a marriage. We're in this together no matter what. So we filled out our paperwork. There is a law, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, Gabrielle, but there's a law that the Obama administration placed in motion to anyone who is trying to adjust their immigration status, who is married to a legal U.S. Resident or citizen, can adjust status within the United States. So my husband went ahead and petitioned for me, and we waited about a year until we received notice saying, we received your application, we're going to call you in to make sure that you are a valid marriage. Our court was our appointment was January of 2018, and we went in for a quote-unquote routine interview. And from what we have heard, they're very, it's supposed to be an extensive interview, very invasive. They asked a lot of personal questions to make sure that it's a valid marriage. In our interview, my husband went in first. He came out. I went in after. And my interview was about 5 minutes long. And they didn't ask me anything. The immigration officers did not ask me anything that pertained to our marriage. They didn't ask us how we met. They just said, and I quote, "It looks like your marriage is legal, but we have other immigration officials that would like to talk to you." And I thought it was part of the routine, but it was not. It was actually immigration's. It was ICE, Immigration's Customs Enforcement officers who came in to handcuff me, shackle me, and bring me to Suffolk House of Corrections because I had a previous order of deportation that I was trying to adjust, which is the reasoning why they said, and amongst that, also one of the main reasons, and this kind of sticks in the back of my head, is they had available bed space in the prison that they were trying to fill, and child care was not an issue because they could be raised by my husband. It's and that kind of like hits me still because, as we know, children need both parents. It's really hard for someone to say that a dad who works 40, 50-hour weeks can raise, at the time, a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. And so for them to say, hey, we have available beds and childcare is not an issue, we're going to bring you in, is just not something that should be acceptable at all. So through that, I wasn't even allowed to say my goodbyes to my husband. I said, can I give him a hug? Can I give him my wedding ring? Can he hold on to anything? They flat out said no. After that, I said, okay, well, where are you taking me? Well, we are going to take you to Suffolk House of Corrections and finish processing you and possibly be deported. And I was like, oh, okay. And that was, in that moment, I felt just that uncertainty that we always feel. It was like, oh, this is like the worst feeling, and I'm never going to see my husband again, and I don't know what's going to happen with my children, and I don't know what's going to happen with me. I don't know how long I'm going to be detained. How long am I going to be in Bristol House of Corrections filling this bed that you need to be filled? And it was just insane. I was scared, I was crying. I had never been in trouble before. I'd never been handcuffed. I had never even been questioned by the police at all in my, how old was I, 30 years of life. So that experience was very traumatic. And I also remember thinking, what am I going to say to my children? Because before I left, they were really sick. They were getting strep, and they were getting ear infections, and they were just, how kids are in the winter months. What am I going to say to my children that mommy never came back? How are they going to bounce back from this? 1 in 3 in early childhood, it's the formative years in their lives. It defines pretty much how the rest of your life is going to go. So a traumatic experience to never see mommy again, or to not see mommy for X amount of months, is something really hard to overcome. And I cried because I was taken from one center to another center for 2 hours, X amount of hours, and like finally when I got to Bristol House of Corrections at night, it had been like a whole 7-hour ordeal just to get me from one point to another point. I was finally allowed to make a phone call. Throughout the whole course of everything, I was trying to call my husband, call my attorney, make all the calls that I could, and kept on saying, well, no, you have to wait until you get to Bristol House of Corrections. Oh, sorry, I keep on saying Bristol, it's Suffolk House of Corrections. I'm thinking Bristol because that's one of the major concerns that we have right now is Bristol House of Corrections, but it's Suffolk House of Corrections. And I finally was able to call my husband, and he was crying because he didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do, and we had no plan. We thought I was going to be deported, and in that, to be honest with you, even to this day, I don't know what he was doing, but he was doing a lot. He ended up meeting with Bill, and the story got out of what happened. Bill and Gabriella and Ro, and they all started connecting, and just pretty much it was like a grassroots movement, and it was helping hold vigils, hold shed light. I can't even begin to explain what you guys were doing on your end, but everyone was organizing, and the community that came out and to support me, people that I had never even met before, just hearing the story and being out there and just, like I said, just saying, hey, enough's enough, like this is not okay, family separation should not and cannot be allowed. So they, and I'm so grateful to them because in the middle of all this, I was being transferred to New Hampshire to be pretty much get set up to board a plane to be sent back to my home country. And I was very, very nervous throughout all this. Gabriella, Ro, my husband, they worked really hard to just rally and just be there for me. And the ups and the downs, that's what you signed up for. And I'm thankful, I'm truly thankful that all my fellow Rhode Islanders came out in support, because without some of you here, some of you that are not here, I would have still been detained, and I don't know what path our family would have ended up going in, because as we all know, my birth country is Guatemala. It's not the best country out there to raise a family, especially 2 children who, as much as we try, Spanish is not their first language. So that uncertainty was kind of, trying to figure out a plan of how to survive in a country that doesn't have the best survival odds and doesn't have the best future for my husband, for my children, for myself. Eventually, I was released through everything, through a class action lawsuit, through our campaigns, I can't even say this, saying Free Lilian just sounds so weird to me. It does. And through the Free Lilian campaign and everything coming together, and that is really humbling and just makes me feel very happy to know that a lot of people just rallied and helped and came out against an injustice. And when I was released, it was also very, very confusing, because I was released the same way that I was detained, with no explanation, no reasoning, not even an apology. It was just here you go, your husband's going to come pick you up. And I obviously wasn't going to ask for any questions or any explanations. So even when I called my husband that day saying, hey, I'm being moved, they're saying I'm being released, he couldn't even believe it. So he called our lawyer, and our lawyer said, don't ask any questions, just get over to, Burlington? It's Burlington, Mass, and be there when she's released. And that's kind of how that story unfolded, but it wasn't the end. I mean, through that, we were still in the uncertainty. There's a lot more in the process. There are waivers that you have to fill, waivers that need to get approved. There's 2 waivers after that you need to present to immigration, have immigration approve, and then once those waivers get approved, you go through something that's called consular process. And consular process is when you go to your country of origin, your country of birth, and you go through pretty much everything that you went through in the United States back in your home country. Your marriage gets revisited and recertified. You have to go to medical appointments and go see government-appointed physicians. You have to run background checks, and to us it was kind of like, really? Like, I have to do all this? I was 3 years old when I was last in Guatemala. What possible criminal record could I have? The shots that I have are all the shots that I had to, that I was given when I was going through the public school system. So, but we did it because it's, like I said, it's part of the outdated immigration system. So we went ahead and we went to Guatemala and we did all that. And then our dear friend Gabriela came along the day before our interview, because she was there through it all. So it was one of those things, if for whatever reason our marriage is found it doesn't get approved, she would be there. She would be there with camera in hand, phone in hand, calling every news channel that she could possibly call. It would be free Lilian from Guatemala. So she was there, and that day was just emotional and intense, and we went to the U.S. Embassy in Guatemala and we sat in we went through our interview and everything, and we were missing 2 documents. And those 2 documents were like, no, we were so close. We were missing an updated version of a birth certificate and a different background check, not the police background check that I had handed in, but a court background check that apparently is different. So here we are in a country that is completely unknown to us, scrambling, getting lost, trying to get these documents to hand back in. And once we handed those in, we were all set. They said, your marriage is approved, everything seems valid. Now we will send you back your passport and you'll be able to re-enter the United States, quote unquote, legally. And I waited for like about a week and a half. So this whole ordeal was also, it took about a month, but we waited for about a week and a half to get my passport back and come back into the United States through a legal point of entry and go through getting a stamp on your passport, going through customs and saying, same thing, what is the reason why you're entering the United States? And I looked at the customs agent and I'm like, how long do you have? And so I gave him the story in a nutshell. He stamped my passport, and for the first time, and it was someone who had nothing to do with what had happened to me, but for the first time I got an apology. He said, I'm sorry for what happened to you. And that really kind of hit me, because here's someone who has this job to whether let you into the country or not. That humanity that he showed by just that empathy, that humanity, by saying, I'm sorry about what happened to you. It should have never happened to you. Really kind of just got me. And it still kind of does. And that was in May, a couple of months ago. And about a month later, I received my residency card. And now I can say, come full circle, I am a legal U.S. resident. Thank you. And that's kind of why I'm still here, because like Rose says, it's not just about me, it's about all of us. At some point in our lives, someone in our family, someone in our past was undocumented and is just trying to go and navigate this crazy, crazy path. And that's why we have to consistently ask, especially going into these 2020 elections, how are we going to protect the most vulnerable? How are we going to stop separating families? How are we going to do our part in this? And I think by asking those questions and protecting our dreamers, protecting our future, and I think it's the best thing that we can do. So I want to thank all of you for taking the time and being here with us tonight. Thank you.